The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the small town diner parking lot, painting everything in golden hues. Emily hurried across the cracked asphalt, her backpack bouncing against her shoulder. She didn't notice the old pickup truck skidding around the corner until it was almost on top of her. Panic surged through her, freezing her for a moment, and then instinct took over. A strong hand grabbed her, pulling her out of the way just as the truck screeched past. She gasped, clutching her chest, and turned to look at her rescuer. He was a stranger, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a leather jacket and worn jeans, his dark hair falling slightly into his eyes. There was a calm, unshakable look about him, as if danger was something he met daily and shrugged off. "You okay?" he asked casually, brushing imaginary dust from his jacket. His tone was steady, almost indifferent, but there was a hint of concern in the way his dark eyes scanned her for injuries. Yes, thank you," Emily stammered, her voice shaky. She wanted to say more, explain herself, explain who she was, but the words caught in her throat. She wasn't sure how much of the truth she could tell. Her father, a notorious biker known across half the state, had a reputation that made even the bravest men pause. And here she was, saved by a man who had no idea whose life he'd just protected. Jake shrugged, giving her a faint smile. "No problem. Just watch the road next time." Then he stepped back, casual and unassuming, as if this had been nothing more than helping someone cross the street. Emily's heart ached at the normalcy in his demeanor. Most people would have panicked, or worse. Emily adjusted her bag, still breathing heavily. I should go," she said, though she knew she couldn't. The thought of being alone in that parking lot, even for a minute, was unbearable. Jake didn't move, but his presence felt like a shield, strong and solid. "Sit for a minute inside," he suggested. "Coffee's on me." She hesitated, weighing the risk. Her father's world was dangerous, violent, and protective beyond reason. One wrong move, and Jake could be caught in something he didn't understand. But something about him felt safe. Tentatively, she nodded and followed him through the diner doors, the warm smell of coffee and fried food washing over her. As they settled into a booth by the window, she tried to calm herself. Outside, the roar of motorcycles in the distance made her tense. That was her father and his gang, probably scouting the town as usual. She prayed they hadn't noticed her, hadn't noticed this stranger. For now, though, she could breathe. And she could watch this stranger, this accidental protector, sip his coffee and smile without fear. A part of her wondered how long that safety would last, and whether the moment she dared to trust someone might soon come crashing down. Jake stirred his coffee slowly, glancing out the window at the quiet street. Emily sat across from him, fidgeting with the strap of her backpack, her mind racing faster than the engines outside could ever roar. She wanted to tell him everything. About her father, about the bikers who ruled half the county with fear, but the words stuck in her throat. How could she explain that the man sitting calmly in front of her had just unwittingly crossed paths with someone he might regret saving? "Do you live around here?" Jake asked, breaking the silence. His voice was casual, but his eyes held that same careful attentiveness that had saved her moments ago. Emily hesitated. "Sort of. I'm staying with family," she said, deliberately vague. The truth, that she was constantly on the move to avoid trouble, was too dangerous to share. Even here, in this small diner, danger could find her. Jake nodded and took another sip of his coffee. "Well, you're lucky I was passing by." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't need words to reassure someone. Not many people get that lucky. Emily felt a pang of guilt mixed with relief. She owed him more than she could explain. And yet, the distant roar of motorcycles outside reminded her just how fragile this safety was. She peered through the window, and in the fading sunlight, she saw a cluster of black bikes down the street, engines rumbling low. Her stomach twisted. Her father. He was never far, never distracted. And now Jake, completely unaware, had stepped straight into her dangerous world. "Everything okay?" Jake asked, noticing her tense posture. He tilted his head slightly, like he could see the storm brewing in her mind. Emily forced a small smile. "Yeah, just thinking," she said softly, hoping he wouldn't probe further. The diner felt like a fragile bubble of calm, but outside, the storm was approaching fast. Her father's gang had stopped a block away, eyes scanning every movement, every passing car. Rumors of a stranger in town had reached them, and their interest peaked when they spotted Jake's leather jacket and casual confidence. To them, anyone stepping too close to Emily, especially a stranger who dared protect her, was a threat that needed to be evaluated. Inside, Jake laughed quietly at something on the diner menu, unaware of the tension inching closer outside. Emily watched him, a mix of fear and admiration swelling in her chest. He was brave, yes, but completely unprepared for the storm about to hit. She realized that in just a few minutes, her father would know exactly who had saved her. And knowing her father, that would not end quietly. Emily gripped her coffee cup, taking a deep breath. She had to warn him somehow, but could she do it without revealing too much, without putting him directly in danger? The engines outside grew louder, a menacing symphony that shattered the fragile sense of safety. She swallowed hard. I think someone's here, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the diner. Jake's brow furrowed slightly, curiosity and caution mixing on his face. Who? Emily hesitated, heart hammering. The truth was about to explode around them, and neither of them could guess just how much the next few minutes would change everything. The roar of engines outside shattered the diner's calm. Emily's eyes widened as she spotted her father's gang pulling up, black leather jackets gleaming in the fading sunlight. Her stomach twisted with fear. She could feel every second dragging, knowing that Jake, unaware of the danger looming over him, was seconds away from walking into a storm he couldn't yet see. Jake's head lifted, scanning the windows. "What's going on?" he asked casually, though the tension in his voice betrayed him just slightly. Emily shook her head, panic rising. It's my father. You need to get out of here." Jake frowned, confused. "Your father?" Before she could explain, the diner doors swung open, and the group of bikers entered, the sound of their boots echoing against the linoleum floor. The leader, tall and imposing with a face that seemed carved from stone, stopped in front of Jake. Emily's heart froze. This was her father. She could feel the weight of his presence, the authority that made even grown men hesitate, now focused entirely on Jake. "Who are you?" her father growled, voice low and dangerous. "And why were you touching my daughter?" Jake straightened, standing slowly. She was in danger. I didn't know who she was. He gestured vaguely, trying to explain without making things worse. Emily stepped forward, placing a hand on Jake's arm. "Dad, wait, he saved me. He didn't know." Her father's eyes narrowed, scanning Jake from head to toe. "You don't understand. In my world, people who touch family without permission, they pay." He took a step closer, the tension so thick Emily could almost feel it pressing against her chest. Jake's jaw tightened. He had dealt with his fair share of threats, but this was different. The man in front of him radiated danger and authority. He held his ground, meeting the biker's glare without flinching. "Look, I saved her. That's it. I didn't know. You think that matters?" The father barked. "It doesn't. You saved her, yes. But you've now crossed me. And crossing me is not something anyone survives easily." Emily's hand trembled as she gripped her father's arm. "Please, Dad, he's not the enemy. He saved my life. Can't you see that?" For a moment, time seemed to stretch. The roar of engines outside faded into silence as every eye in the diner focused on the trio. Then, slowly, the tension began to shift. Jake's courage, calm in the face of overwhelming danger, seemed to earn a reluctant respect. Her father studied him closely, the muscles in his jaw flexing. Finally, he exhaled, a long, deliberate breath. "You saved her. That makes you different." His voice was still dangerous, but less immediately lethal. "But know this, anyone who hurts her from now on will answer to me." "Understood." Jake nodded slowly, still on edge, but relieved. Emily let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. For now, the storm had passed, but the unspoken warning lingered. Outside, the engines revved again, and her father's gang filed out, leaving the diner in uneasy silence. Jake sank back into the booth, adrenaline coursing through him, while Emily stared at him, awe and gratitude mixing with lingering fear. She realized something important. In a world ruled by danger, loyalty and courage weren't just traits, they were shields. And Jake had just become one for her, whether he knew it or not.